For nearly a century, Mel Brooks has been the undisputed king of comedy, an unstoppable force whose wit, timing, and fearless humor helped reshape American entertainment. At 99 years old, he stands as one of the last living legends from Hollywood's golden era. His films Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Spaceballs. The producers didn't just make audiences laugh. They became cultural touchstones, quoted and celebrated across generations. But despite his joyful screen persona and his lifelong reputation as one of Hollywood's friendliest comic geniuses, Mel Brooks has kept one thing locked away for decades: the list of 5 actors he simply could not stand working with. Fans are stunned not because Mel Brooks is opening up, but because he never does. He has always been the kind of comedian who avoids controversy, choosing laughter over conflict. Yet as he reflects on a career that spans Broadway, film, television, and comedy history, Brooks is ready to speak with the kind of honesty that only comes with age and total freedom. This is not a petty list. These are actors whose behavior, ego, or attitude left a mark on Mel so deep that even 50 years later, he remembers every tense moment, from clashes on set to shocking behind-the-scenes meltdowns to creative battles that nearly derailed entire productions. Mel Brooks pulls back the curtain on a side of Hollywood fans rarely see. His revelations are raw, funny, emotional, and at times unbelievable. For a man who has spent his entire life making the world laugh, this unexpected confession feels like a final, unfiltered chapter, one that shows Mel Brooks not just as a comedian, but as a human being who endured chaos, conflict, and unforgettable personalities in an industry where nothing is ever as charming as it appears. And hearing Mel Brooks finally say what he's held inside for nearly a century, it's shocking, it's hilarious, and you won't believe who made the list. Mel Brooks has always been known as the man who could make anyone laugh. For decades, his films and performances turned even the most serious audiences into roaring crowds. At 99 years old, after a lifetime of jokes, slapstick brilliance, and unforgettable characters, Mel still carries the same spark that made him a legend. But behind the scenes, far away from the crowds, the interviews, and the stage lights, there were moments in his career that even he doesn't look back on fondly. As Mel himself has said many times, filmmaking isn't just about the script or the comedy. It's about people working together, trusting each other, and respecting the process. And when those things break down, even the funniest sets can become battlegrounds. For almost a century, Mel remained quiet about those battles. He chose humor over hostility, diplomacy over controversy. But now, at 99, with nothing left to lose and nothing left to prove, he is finally ready to talk. The first chapter of his revelation begins not with anger, but with honesty. Mel explains that during his early years in Hollywood, he had a simple rule: make 'em laugh, but don't let 'em push you around. He stuck to that rule religiously, yet a few actors tested that boundary more than he ever expected. Mel recalls moments when carefully crafted comedy scenes were derailed by ego, times when actors fought over lines, refused direction, or stormed off set because the spotlight wasn't solely on them. As a director who thrived on creative freedom and collaborative energy, Mel felt these clashes deeply. Instead of turning into raging confrontations, though Mel often responded with humor, he would crack a joke or lighten the mood, even when he felt genuinely frustrated. But just because he kept those frustrations quiet doesn't mean he forgot them. Mel describes one incident where an actor arrived late every single day, sometimes hours late, leaving the entire crew waiting. The delays cost money, time, and energy. Mel, already juggling the pressure of directing a major comedy, felt trapped between protecting his staff and maintaining the illusion of a smooth-running set. Another time, an actor refused to perform a simple gag, claiming it was beneath them, even though the gag was central to the scene. Mel remembers thinking, if you can't laugh at yourself, what business do you have in comedy? These stories, told now with clarity and almost grandfatherly wisdom, set the tone for what's to come. Mel Brooks makes it clear he doesn't hate easily. What he does hate, however, is disrespect. Disrespect for the craft, disrespect for the crew, and disrespect for the process that makes comedy possible. This chapter is the doorway into Mel's long-suppressed memories, the ones he avoided sharing for 60, 70, even 80 years. Now, he finally lifts the curtain. He reveals that 5 actors pushed him past his limit not because they were untalented, but because their behavior clashed with everything Mel believed in. Working with them, he says, changed his understanding of fame, personality, and professionalism. After all these years, he says, I think people deserve the truth. With that, Mel Brooks, Hollywood legend, comedy genius, and the last surviving master of golden era humor, prepares to name the 5 actors whose behavior tested his patience more than anyone else, the ones who made him sigh, grit his teeth, and wonder how comedy could survive the storms behind the scenes. And Mel begins with the first actor on his list, someone fans never expected. When Mel Brooks finally revealed the first name on his list, even people who knew Hollywood's history were stunned. This actor, once adored by audiences for their charisma and quick wit, had a very different reputation among those who worked with them closely. To fans, they were hilarious. To Mel, however, they were a walking storm cloud. Mel recalls the moment clearly. It was early in his filmmaking career, at a time when every day on set meant learning, adapting, and trying to build something unforgettable. The actor he names first was already well-established, famous, glamorous, and used to getting their way. And that, Mel explains, was the root of the trouble. From the very first rehearsal, the tension was obvious. Mel had written a comedic sequence he believed would become one of the film's most iconic scenes. It relied on timing, chemistry, and collaboration, 3 elements essential to any great comedy. But the actor refused to follow direction. Not once, not twice. Every single take, Mel remembers giving gentle notes, offering fun alternatives, trying different angles, adjusting the script, anything to find balance. But the actor would interrupt, roll their eyes, or dismiss his ideas with a wave of the hand, as if the entire production existed solely for them. And this was only the beginning. On several mornings, the actor arrived late, sometimes hours behind schedule. The crew waited. The cast waited. The cameras sat idle. Mel tried to stay calm, cracking jokes or telling stories to keep the mood light. But behind the humor was a growing frustration. Every late arrival cost money. Every delay threatened scenes. And every disruption chipped away at the trust needed to make a great comedy. Mel remembers a specific day when tensions reached their peak. The actor refused to say a line because they believed it made them look too silly. Mel, nearly speechless, replied, "We're making a comedy. Silly is the point." But the argument continued until Mel, for the first and perhaps only time in his life, felt genuine anger rising in him during a shoot. Crew members later told Mel they had never seen him look so defeated. This wasn't just another professional disagreement. It was a clash of philosophies. Comedy, Mel believed, required bravery, being willing to look foolish, vulnerable, or even ridiculous for the sake of a laugh. This actor believed the opposite. They wanted to be funny without ever risking their image. Yet, despite the chaos, Mel pushed through. He navigated around the ego, rewrote scenes, reassigned lines, and even changed camera placements to reduce conflict. The final film was a success, but Mel admits it came at a cost. The joy he felt making his other movies was missing from this one. The energy, the teamwork, the spark, none of it survived the storm created by that single difficult personality. Years later, when asked in interviews if he ever had a nightmare actor on set, Mel usually laughed and dodged the question. But now, at 99, he finally admits, "Yes, and this one nearly broke me." Mel reflects on that time not with bitterness, but with sadness. He speaks of wasted potential, how the actor could have delivered comedic brilliance if they had allowed themselves to let go. Instead, the experience left Mel exhausted, drained, and determined to be far more selective about whom he cast in future projects. And so, the first name on the list isn't chosen out of spite. It's chosen because that actor taught Mel a lesson he never forgot. Talent means nothing without humility, respect, and the willingness to collaborate. Mel reveals the second actor, a performer whose temper, he says, turned every day into a ticking time bomb. If the first actor on Mel Brooks' list was a diva who drained the joy from every scene, The second actor was something far more dangerous, unpredictable. Mel describes this performer as a ticking time bomb, someone whose talent was undeniable but so was their temper. This actor had a reputation long before stepping onto one of Mel's sets. Producers warned him. Crew members whispered about past incidents. But Mel, ever the optimist, believed he could bring out the best in anyone. He believed humor could disarm even the toughest personality. He discovered quickly that this time, he was wrong. The first explosion came on day one. The actor was rehearsing a scene involving fast-paced dialogue, a signature Mel Brooks style clever lines mixed with frantic physical energy. After a few takes, the actor suddenly slammed their script onto the floor and yelled, "This makes no sense." Mel, trying to remain calm, approached with his usual patience. He explained the rhythm, the timing, and the comedic logic. Instead of listening, the actor turned away and muttered under their breath about amateur writing. The room fell silent. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, but Mel kept pushing forward. He knew some actors carried tension, and he assumed it was just nerves. That optimism lasted until the next morning, when the actor arrived already fuming. A wardrobe assistant offered a minor adjustment to their costume, nothing more than a suggestion, and the actor erupted, shouting so loudly the soundstage doors rattled. The assistant, visibly shaken, apologized even though they had done nothing wrong. Mel was furious, not for himself, but for his crew. "They're the backbone of the entire operation," he later said. "Respect them or get out." Still, he tried to salvage the situation. He pulled the actor aside, hoping to find common ground. That conversation became one of the most stressful moments of his career. The actor paced, yelled, cursed, and accused everyone of sabotaging their performance. Mel realized then that this wasn't a person having a bad day, this was someone who viewed the world as an enemy. The breaking point came during a pivotal scene. The actor was supposed to deliver a simple comedic gesture, light-hearted, playful, quick. Instead, they threw the prop across the room, shattering it. Everyone froze. Mel stepped forward, slowly, carefully, and asked, "Why did you do that?" The actor shouted back, "Because I'm not a clown." For Mel Brooks, a man who built an empire on humor and silliness, the remark hit deep. Comedy was not something to be ashamed of, it was an art. The actor's outburst revealed a disdain for the very thing Mel cherished. After that day, the entire set walked on eggshells. People whispered. Doors closed softly. No one knew when the next explosion would come. And yet, when the camera rolled, the actor delivered brilliantly. That was the most frustrating part. Underneath the chaos, the talent was undeniable. The final performance was electric, but the cost to morale was enormous. Mel admits that finishing that film felt like surviving a storm. The footage was excellent, but the experience left scars. Crew members quit. Others refused to work with that actor again. And Mel, who always valued kindness over ego, knew he had encountered someone who drained the soul from the creative process. "I don't hate many people," Mel says softly, "but I hated what that person did to my set." With age, he no longer hides the truth. Brilliant performances mean nothing when the human being behind them destroys the people around them, and so, the second name on Mel Brooks' list belongs to the actor whose temper nearly broke an entire production. Mel moves on to the third actor, someone whose betrayal struck far deeper than outbursts or ego, a person he once trusted. For Mel Brooks had spent nearly a century making people laugh, shaping comedy, and defining a style that only he could truly master. But as he stepped into the later years of his life, he began reflecting on his long Hollywood journey, on the triumphs, the heartbreaks, and yes, the difficult personalities that tested even his legendary patience. And when he finally revealed the 5 actors he hated working with the most, the world was stunned. But Chapter 4 reveals something even more surprising: the truth behind why those tensions happened, and how they shaped the man Mel Brooks ultimately became. Because behind every feud was a deeper story, one that exposed the pressures of comedic perfection, the clash of giant egos, and the vulnerability of a creator who wanted nothing more than to bring joy to audiences. Mel explained that each actor on his list wasn't chosen out of pettiness, but because of moments that pushed him to his emotional and creative limits. Some of the conflicts occurred on set, under the brutal demands of production schedules. Others happened off camera, fueled by misunderstandings, bruised pride, or the impossible expectations placed on people living under Hollywood's brightest lights. Chapter 4 focuses on Mel's ultimate realization that even the actors he once hated were, in a strange way, essential to his success. The tension, the disagreements, the arguments, they forced him to stand firm in his vision. They sharpened his instincts. They taught him where to compromise and where to fight for what mattered. One of his most surprising admissions was that a few of these actors actually came to admire him. Years later, time softened the anger, age added clarity, and Mel, approaching 100, could look back with humor at situations that once made his blood boil. He even joked in his interview, saying, "If you haven't hated someone in Hollywood, you haven't worked long enough." But the most emotional revelation came near the end of the chapter, when Mel confessed that holding onto grudges had robbed him of peace during some of the best years of his success. He learned slowly, painfully, that forgiveness wasn't for the other person. It was for himself. This chapter closes with Mel reflecting not on hate, but on gratitude. Gratitude for the challenges, for the difficult personalities who unknowingly shaped his character, and for the fact that even after all the chaos, he could still laugh, still perform, still create. And as he nears 100, Mel Brooks isn't holding onto anger anymore. He's holding onto the stories, and the lessons, and most of all the comedy that carried him through a lifetime of unforgettable highs and explosive lows.